Encoder sequence-to-sequence modeling based on long short-term memory recurrent neural networks to predict retrofit benefits for extreme wind hit for environmental hazard mitigation of Florida's flood-prone lands. My name is Yusuf. The sequential model, which is used in this illustration, called sec-to-sec model. The sec-to-sec model first developed in Google in 2014, and it got a lot of attention for machine translation compared to the traditional algorithms, because the input sequence in one language is translated to another language, has arbitrarily long sequence. The model called many-to-many. The input sequence called the encoder, and the output sequence is decoder. That is why this model called Encoder-Decoder model. It includes two layers of encoder and decoder. Because in natural language domain, we want to predict the next word based on all given the previous word, similar to autoregression models, which use the historical data to predict the next event. However, in our model, I used as I show in the later slide, only the input from one language in continuous time series data prediction. The output in our model is only one, which is amount of retrofit benefits for given sequence of the events. We want to predict how much aid it would get from the government. I'm sorry. The developed sec-to-sec model is based on two layers of LSTM and one dense layer. In the input layer, it gets a sequence of the events and make a hidden representations, as I described earlier. Because we only interested in given sequence and not in the output of retrofit to be given to the model. Again, we decoded as a 0, which is the basic of teacher enforcing, that models try to make a hidden representation of the zeros. Every layer composed of many LSTMs. Typically, an LSTM has 3 gates: input gate, forget gate, and output gate. Because this model keeps the error in the forget gate, it is well suitable for any number of sequences and events. Our case study is city of the Pensacola, county of Escambia. I studied the income level, the median income for household for 2014 to 2019. During the 5 years, the median is not very changed. However, because the census reflects the median, I used the quantile in the urban sim. seems to be very effective in capturing the spatiotemporal pattern of the changing zip code. That is, we want to estimate the amount of gains by federal agency who oversees the conditions of given these funds for regions. That is, typically those have lower income has higher chance of getting the funds as declared by the FEMA. As in a macroscopic level, the city is located in the southern part of the US, and the data is for 2019, which includes the Central Baldwin County Storm Mitigation Plan, and following the hit on March 26, 2009 by HMGP Act. In order to make a prediction for given sequence of the events, in this case I gave a 5 years income data to predict the retrofit amount. I used income level as a baseline features for certain zip codes that's identified by census zip code. At the end, I found out that 10 unique CDP is required because the damage data only includes 10 unique CDPs. For 4 of them, like for as for CDP, they encoded as a Pensacola, which is different than the actual zip codes. Some of the regions are called Bellevue, Pensacola, Gulf Breeze, and so on. It's divided, the whole data comes to 303 dataset samples, and this is a small sample dataset. And by 90 to 10%, I would have 272 instances for training and 31 for the test. I use robust scaling that's identical to the percentile which is reflected in the census income data for the years of 2014 and 2018. For visualization, I use urban sim, that is takes inputs from 5 years to predict the retrofit amount. In the left side, the actual amount is given for the vulnerable areas, and at the center is the sec-to-sec prediction, and the left side is the sequential linear regression predictions for different zones. This is the baseline model, and even in the baseline model, as my first effort, sec-to-sec gained higher accuracy. As I will explain later, it also gets higher accuracy when I compare it against the non-sequential version. For the second model I developed, I used estimated wind damage data from NOAA as an input to sec-to-sec and sequential linear regression. The result unexpectedly um dropped in accuracy. Um the reasons can be because the zip codes unique are not unique for different regions of Pensacola, um, as they decoded as a unique zip address. That could be because of that. Regardless, this model can accurately predict the the paid the highest paid region um very precisely than the previous sec-to-sec model. As I was using urban sim, I found that I can use stats models to verify whether the coefficients for regression, this type of regression, which is the sequential linear regression, um, is significant. And it turns out that it is not significant, and I'm sorry. So I use different methods putting by setting the intercept into 0. The models get significant when the f-test um, is being used. Uh, because this added feature of estimated damage was not accurate, um, as I mentioned, because of the reasons I mentioned before. Uh, However, the final model with intercept 0 in the sequence model shows that the income are significant contributors to the overall variations in the retrofit amount. Um, in some parts, some of the estimated damage also seems to be significant, but there isn't enough evidence to support that. Uh, the represented sec-to-sec model is compared against to sequential linear regression based on the income level for different zones. The accuracy in the RMSE is about 3100 and for sec-to-sec model, and 3300 for sequential linear regression. The sec-to-sec model gained 60% higher accuracy when compared to the sequential linear regression, and correspondingly, when I compared the sec-to-sec linear to its counterpart non-sequence linear regression, which is the simple linear regression, it had 3% higher accuracy. Um, the simple linear regression is developed based on the augmented um, instances. As for every retrofit, we have 5 different inputs for incomes of 2014 to 2019. Because, as I illustrated before, the model is based on estimated damage that is prone to um, outliers, and we need somehow more accurate representation for the wind data in the scale and magnitude. Um, Here are list of softwares I used for this type of research. Beautiful Soup, which is a library, Pythonic library for getting the census data, and I manually grab, gr- I manually downloaded the Shapely files that is used for in GeoPandas for county boundaries, and I use the stats model for linear regression and Keras for seq-to-seq deep learning. I used Urban Sim for visualizing the data on the city of Pensacola. Thank you so much for your time.